So I'm going to be testing the 3 different methods of fire starter that I had written up. The first one is going to be the cotton and the Vaseline, and throughout the whole test we're going to be looking for 3 basic components. We want to see first how well does the fire starter ignite. Secondly, we want to see how long it can sustain a flame, and lastly we're just going to see in general how easy is it to use, how easy can I set it up, is it messy, does it take a lot, does it break apart, just real general basic things that are going to come in handy later on in either an emergency situation or in just a general backpacking or camping situation. So the first one is going to be the cotton and Vaseline, and before I test the fire starter I'm just going to test a raw piece of cotton just so you can see the difference. I'm going to do half dry and half wet so we can see how it ignites. So I'm just going to fluff it up a little bit and we'll see how well it takes a spark. And this is untreated dry cotton. So it's there we go. Took a little bit and it finally caught. Stays lit for a little while. Alright. So works pretty well, but with the difference between a raw piece of cotton and the fire starter is going to show up now. If I were to wet this, and obviously outdoors it would be similar to a rainy situation, or if your gear gets wet, how is your fire starter going to react? So here we have just a wet piece of cotton, untreated, and let's see how well it does. This isn't going to catch anytime soon. So one of the disadvantages of just using raw, dry materials. Alright, so now we're going to move on to the treated cotton, and this is really just Vaseline rubbed onto the cotton ball. One thing I do notice immediately is that it's a little messy, kind of hard to fluff, and I'm getting this stuff all over my hand, so not very practical simply from a cleanliness or just an ease of use point of view, but we'll see how well it does. So this is the first half. Alright, as you can see, this is much faster, much hotter, and it seems to be lasting quite a bit longer than the dry cotton. And it's starting to die down. And even after it's been burning for a while, it still does hold a pretty good flame. Alright. So next I want to test the cotton with the Vaseline. This time we're going to simulate wet conditions. So just going to soak that, and let's see if this still takes a spark. So that crackling you hear is all of the water evaporating. Clearly not as hot, not as bright, but a complete different reaction than the wet cotton. Again, it's not as good as the dry cotton with the Vaseline, but you will still be able to get somewhat of a light with this. All right, put that out real quick. Okay. So next up on our test is going to be the jute dipped in wax, and again the same with the cotton. I'm going to try this as a raw material. The one upside about the jute though is that even though you have one piece here, you can separate them into individual strands. You'll have about 4 to 6 strands per piece, and each individual strand can actually be used as one fire starter. So the same as the cotton, you're going to want to fluff it, kind of tear it a little bit. You really just want as much surface area for that fire. Alright. Again, this is dry, untreated jute. So you just fluff it up. This is one strand, and let's see if that takes a spark. Alright, took a little bit, and as you can see, it catches very well. Unfortunately, it's a little short-lived. Even the dry, untreated cotton did last a little longer, and I believe that's because there's just a lot more surface area on a cotton ball than there is on the jute. Next, we're going to try a piece of dry, untreated. There's one of the strands again. This time I'm going to soak it in water, simulate wet conditions. Alright, and same as before, just want to shred it a little bit, kind of fluff it up into a little ball, and this is just giving you more material to burn. It's giving you more surface area. Alright, and let's see how we do with this. So I see bits and pieces catch here and there, and they may just be the pieces that didn't get wet, but it's really not looking like I'm going to get much of a flame from this. I'm shooting pretty hot sparks out of my fire seal, and I'm not really catching anything. So compared to the cotton, raw, same. In a wet condition, you're not really going to get a whole lot out of the jute here. Alright, so that's the jute untreated, and now we're going to try the jute with the wax. And just comparing this to the cotton, a lot less messy, much easier to take out. So again, I'm just going to try one strand. So one of the benefits of using the natural cordage, since it's multiple strands, one piece will last you for multiple fires. So if you soak it well enough when you make it, you should get wax all the way through all of the fibers. It does make it a little tough to fluff up, though, I will say. Alright? So this is the wax dipped jute and the dry condition. And again, it did take some time. It's burning much hotter than the untreated jute, and it lasts much longer. Now compared to the cotton, not as hot a flame, and maybe about 2/3 of the duration you're going to get with that. Right. And next up is going to be the wax dipped jute, simulating wet conditions. Alright, so you can see even wet, the jute still burns, still takes a really good flame. And honestly, I think compared to the cotton wet, it burns almost the same as it does dry, which is a really good thing if you get caught in a sudden downpour, if your gear gets wet, or if for some reason something falls in there or spills inside your gear and wets your fire starter. This is almost identical to the jute dry. So I think that performed really well. Right, and now we'll move on to the last one. We have the fire starter puck. which is basically just dried wax with wood shavings inside. Before we try that, we're going to try wood shavings dry without any wax, just to see how they do. And this is about the same amount that's in one of the pucks. Let's see how this catches. We got some of the cotton over there catching already before the shavings. So not looking too good for the shavings. So we were having some trouble lighting the plain wood shavings. May have had something to do with the direction of the spark. So I'm going to try again. And if I don't get it, we'll have to bring in the reinforcements, the barbecue lighter. So let's see if we can get this to take a spark. Okay, so that worked much better. It was just the direction of my fire seal. So a little tricky to take a spark. Not as easy as the cotton or as the jute, but you can see the flame is a lot more substantial, and obviously depending on the amount of shavings you have, you're going to get a different length of time. But this is pretty close to what's in one of these pucks. So that's a pretty good flame. Next, put that out. And next we're going to try untreated shavings, and we're going to simulate wet conditions. So let's see how well that does. And we may have to use a lighter for this one if we even get a spark to catch it all. Let's see what we can do here. Not looking too good. I'll give it a shot with just a regular lighter. And it catches but goes away as soon as it hits a wet spot. So again, looking the same as the untreated cotton and the untreated jute. In a wet situation, not really your best bet unless you have something to prolong the fire, something to help keep the material dry. So we'll move on to the fire puck. So you can even leave the paper on and use it as extra material. And just to increase the surface area, I'm going to try and break this up a little bit. Alright, so from a preparation standpoint, it does take a little more than the cotton or the jute. Let's see if it can hold the flame. Alright, doesn't seem to be catching. Let's see if it works with the lighter. Okay, so parts of it do catch. It is a little bit tougher to get a spark, and I think that has more to do with the composition of the actual puck itself. If you put a little bit more shavings, a much higher ratio of shaving to wax, you might get more material to start with. You could also try substituting the shavings themselves with sawdust and get a much denser puck. That may not give you as big a flame, but it may be more like an ember, and it'll stay hotter a little bit longer. But right here, this is still burning. Not a huge flame, not very bright, but I have a feeling that this will burn for a long time. I mean, essentially, the puck is just a big candle. So if you do get the shavings to catch, it's like a wick, and this will probably stay lit for quite some time. Much longer than the cotton, much longer than the jute. So this would be ideal for maybe a windy situation. or a situation where you have the luxury of time and you don't mind waiting a little bit. But the flame is not going down. If anything, it's getting bigger now that you're exposing more wood. And it looks like it'll probably burn for a while. So I say this one definitely burns the longest, but you will have to play a little bit with the composition as far as the wood to wax ratio, or whether you use wood shavings or sawdust or any other kind of wood or raw material like that. So overall, I think they all perform fairly well. As far as the three criteria we were going over, the first one was ease of ignition. How well does this take a spark? How quickly does it take a spark? I would have to say that the cotton and the Vaseline were probably the fastest, took the least amount of effort. The jute was pretty good, as you saw with the fire puck. That was terrible. Took a lot of effort. I had to use a lighter. Not going to be your best for an emergency situation. And as far as the duration of the flame, how long can the fire starter sustain a flame? I say the puck wins. Clearly, it will last for a much longer time than the cotton or the jute. I mean, essentially, like I said, you just made yourself a small candle. The jute and the cotton are pretty evenly matched. Remember, I did use one strand of the jute. You could use the entire piece and have just as much or more surface area than you could with the piece of cotton. So those are pretty evenly matched as far as flame duration. And the last criteria was, how easy is this to use? Is it messy? Is it difficult to set up? Is it going to take a lot more effort and time? I think that was pretty clear here. The fire puck was probably the most time-consuming, the most amount of effort that was needed just to get it to light a little bit. The cotton, not hard to light, but very messy, very annoying to deal with. Even the bag on the outside was kind of slimy feeling. It's covered in the Vaseline, so if you don't want to get that stuff all over your gear, all over your hands, I would recommend the jute. It's dry, it's compact, it's very easy to store, very easy to set up, and like you saw, even in wet conditions, burns just as well as it does dry. So overall, each one of these has their strong suits and their weaknesses. Personally, I prefer the jute. I do give up a little bit as far as ignition, but what I lose there, I gain in storage and ability to use it. So I hope you guys learned a lot. I hope you got some useful information out of this. Thanks for watching.